What's up, YouTube? I'm back with another video, and today this is a voiceover time lapse of my digital portrait of Freddie Mercury from Queen. As you can see, I put the basic structure down first, and then I put the paints down from the picture, and then I go in with some of the mid-tone shadows to help form the face, to help form the parts of the face. And then I put in the rest of the stuff, which is, his white tank top. And then I go back in with more of the mid-tone shadows to get the form right. It's like molding clay when you're working in digital format. Basically, you want to get the mid-tones down a little bit, and then you want to go into darker shadows when you want to shape more of the facial structure, his chin, like the chin. And then, of course, you want to put in mid-tones for the fingers and whatnot to help get those in place, or the idea, like to help get the form in place when you're looking at the photo. You want to get the reference down right, and then you just shape it how it is in the photo. And now I'm going into the eyes, putting the eyes right here. First, you want to go in, when doing the eyes, you want to make sure you go in with the dark tone first, and then you fill it in with the lighter tone. Of course, you see I'm trying to get the shadow under the eye right there and trying to get everything right in place. As you can see, I'm struggling a little bit with the eye, with the right eye here. And sometimes I struggle with that. Sometimes I try too much or I don't have the placement right. So sometimes I trim down the opacity in Procreate to make sure I got the eye structure right. And then I use the lasso tool around the part where I want to move, and I either distort or warp it. Now, as you can see, I'm starting to form the eyebrow structure. I use short hair for the eyebrow because I try to want to make it realistic as possible. And now I'm using the smudge tool on certain parts, and then going back in with the mid-tone shadows to shape the nose and yeah. I also fixed the mustache he has, his signature mustache he had. Then I go back in with the mid-tones. I smudge parts of that to flesh it out more, because you don't want to make your mid-tones too blocky. You do that, it looks awkward. Now I'm going back in for other parts. I jump back and forth to certain parts of the portrait to make sure I get certain things right here. And now I'm shaping the microphone right, and I'm shaping the bottom shadow of the bottom lip. And now I'm getting everything else done in place, like the microphone, the hand, shaping more of the face, his hairline. I'm adding more darker shadows onto the microphone, right, as you can see on the right side of your screen. Of course, I use like a flat brush for more of the shadows, and I, trim down the size of it to make sure I get the right size. Going back in with a little more details here and there, and then some slight brushes, some lighter brushes for highlights of the beard, of the mustache. Now I'm going back in with shadows for the ear. It's like I said earlier, it's like when you're doing a digital portrait on Procreate or Photoshop or whatever you want to use, you have to like mold it as if you're molding clay. And of course, you want to look back at your reference photo to make sure everything's in place. And if you need to trim something, just trim it. I usually go with a hard brush, but then I go sometimes with a soft brush to trim the face out. I mean, it depends on what I want to do. If I want to get rid of something completely or just trim it down. I'm going back in with shadows under the eyes. I'm going to fix the tank top. And then, of course, I'm going back with mid-tone shadows for the hands and stuff like that. Reshape the hand and then put more mid-tones down for the fingers. And, of course, I'm going in more here with shadows and stuff like that. And more shadows for the microphone. Just really shaping it how it's supposed to look like in the photo. I'm trying my best to. And I try to experiment with different brushes to get the look of a microphone or as close to it as possible. And I went in with the teeth here, as you can see. I jump back and forth a lot, so please excuse that. And I'm still, shaping out the shadows and stuff like that. And now I'm going into the highlights when I feel like I have good enough midtones and shadows down. Of course, I go back to the shadows just in case it's for touch-ups. And now I'm going back into the highlights. And, sometimes you want to leave highlights like as blaring as possible because it depends on how the photo is. But then again, you want to smudge the outer edges of the highlights to make sure you get that look down. To get certain highlights down, it's more infused with the skin, if that makes sense. But what you mainly want to do is try to get the bright spots done. Yeah, like when I put it at the bottom of his neck here on his chest, I get the very bright spot down. Like just leave it mostly. And then the edges, I just smudge it. And then, of course, I go back to the shadows. Of course, I add highlights here on his left shoulder. And then I add chest hair, of course, because, he always had the chest hair. And, of course, I add highlights to that and dark shadows to that because it's different tones with that as well. And I'm just doing some touch-ups on the hands. And then the microphone, add highlights there. And, of course, add lighter highlights to the fingers to flesh them out more. And then some touch-ups with the highlights on the face. And then on the shoulder here, add more highlights to get that down. Add more highlights to the microphone. And then I go to the hair for the highlights. I use a flat brush for that. And then I smudge it. And then I just finish smudging things out. Then I add the background, whatever color works. And add the signature, add some touch-ups, and that's it. Thanks for joining me.